Hi, welcome back to Living from the Inside Out, Life in the Spiritual Lane. I'm Anne-Marie McElroan. I'm here again with Judy Johnson for the second episode of this new podcast. And we want to start by unpacking a little bit about what does it actually mean when we say living in a spiritual lane? What does that mean to you, Judy? What's that all about?
Thanks, Anne-Marie. I think it's a great question, actually. What does living in the spiritual lane mean? I guess it's a lane that is slightly beyond the wrestle, the tussle, the back and forth, push and pull energy of living in the world as we know it right now, which is fairly chaotic. It's not living out of the world. It's not disassociative in any way, but it's like being in the world, but in a different vibe, like kind of moving with a different energy. And so, you know how cyclists use each other's slipstream, they go in behind and then they get just a little less friction on their journey. A little bit like that, I think. Moving in an energy sort of channel that it's certainly not friction free, but it's a different quality of energy and a different quality of response to the friction that does arise inevitably in living in this world, in human bodies as we do.
It's interesting. I'm hearing almost like we're in a different groove in when we're in the spiritual lane. So if we're in the spiritual lane now, or if that's the lane that we're selecting, what are the other options? Like, what were we doing before that? If we weren't in the spiritual lane, what were we doing?
Well, I can only speak for me, but I feel like before I chose this lane and made a commitment to a daily practice to keep myself in that lane, because it's much more than just choosing the lane. It actually requires a bit of effort to stay there. I would say before that, I was living in the push and pull, in the back and forth, in the lateral kind of transactional, trying to get from life, trying to get from other people, trying to move life or move other people. And now I'm much more focused on moving myself with dignity and grace and ease and peace and respect and love through every situation. And that's pretty much a full-time job, managing my own vibration, my own groove, So yes, I'm still interacting with people, but the quality of the interaction, I don't feel like I'm as much at this push and pull level of relating to life, relating to others. It's much more of a flow through feeling where I'm with people, we're interacting, we're doing things together, but the energy that I am maintaining inside myself means that there's a quality of energy in our interactions that's much easier, smoother, more flowing, more cooperative. I'm not looking to take. I'm there, happy to cooperate, to respond, to share, to be generous, but I don't need anything from the other. And I don't need, still I'm human, of course. There's a feeling of give and take. But even the give and take in the spiritual lane, and that's a whole other theme we could explore, relationships through a spiritual lens. But even a give and take is much more, I'm receiving the beautiful energy of my own spirit and inner world, the beautiful energy of the divine, and that's flowing through me and into my relationships and situations. So it's just a bit of a different way to live, really. Well, actually quite a different way to live. And it does require attention. I'm not going to say word, I'm going to say attention, because you can so
Yeah.
easily slip out of that lane back into the hustle, bustle, tussle.
Well, that's so you said earlier, you mentioned the phrase daily practice, and then you just talked about attention. So let's talk a little bit about that. If this is a lane that we can live in, this spiritual lane, and it requires some attention, and there's the potential for a daily practice, what does that mean? What does that look like if we're living? People often talk about being spiritual. I'm a spiritual person, but what does it mean to actually be living life in a spiritual way?
That's a great question, because really we're all in my view, in the view I have learned with the Brahma Kumaris as a meditator. We are all spirits living in human bodies. So that makes all of us a spiritual person, I guess. But when someone says I'm a spiritual person, I think what that might mean is that they're more attuned to subtle energies in themselves, in the world. And that is a level of attention that one can choose to pay. I can pay attention to the body I'm in. I can pay attention to other people's bodies, the color, the shape, the size, the beauty or lack of. I can pay attention to the physical world and all of the sort of labels that get associated with that. Or I can look intentionally behind all the physicality that's out there, all the material aspects of living in a material world, and I can tune into a frequency. I can tune into someone's qualities, which are just vibrational energy. They're just feelings, really. And so feelings not in the sense of emotion, but in the sense of, like, if my hands can touch something, my mind can also touch, which means perceiving the subtle energies behind things. So I think that's the attention, and consistently choosing, even in situations that are challenging, what is the beauty I see in this person, or what are they trying to achieve, even though it might not be looking so good and they might not actually be achieving it. But if I'm tuning in spiritually, I will be feeling and seeing and understanding the intention behind the actions, and in that way I'm more able to respond to the intention with compassion or understanding, or even help to redirect to a more positive, a more effective strategy. But it just means I'm paying attention to different things. I'm not ignoring the physical reality that I'm living in, because it's very much a reality, but I'm paying attention to what's moving this physical world, what's moving me, what's moving this situation, because it will always be the energy of the intention of the people within it.
Wow.
That's moving.
So it's seeing the surface but looking deeper. It's knowing, really, like I'm hearing, it is really what's inside that counts, not what we see on the outside necessarily, which is where we live so much of our lives, looking at the outside rather than looking for the inside, paying attention to the inside. I wanted to go back to one other thing that you said. Maybe this will be my last question. You said something earlier about how it's living the spiritual lane is not living outside of this world, which I think for some, they would equate a spiritual life, monastic traditions, nuns, priests, as examples of those who have stepped outside of daily life to lead a spiritual life. Is this different? Are we talking about something different than that? Because you're talking about not being outside of the world, but actually being in the world.
I think there are monastic elements to all of the world's great faith traditions. And they do tend to be thought of as the spiritual part, say, of that religion. in the case of this meditation practice of Raj Yoga, I would say that escaping the world, well, one, it doesn't really work. It just means you have to pay the consequences of your attempt to escape. The bills still do need to get paid. And so I think rather than escaping, this practice of meditation is more about being in the world, but in a better way, in a more effective way, actually, in a more natural way, in a way that engenders cooperation and support and ultimately flowing to successful outcomes for everybody, however we define that. But I guess fulfilling the human potential rather than, bumping up to walls and then getting stuck in places like that. I don't think you have to leave the world to be able to do that. In fact, I did explore this tradition, being just on a cushion meditating for many days. And I found that left with my own mind, as much stuff comes up as there is interacting with the world. Because all the people in my world are also in my mind and in my heart. So whether I'm sitting alone or not, they're still all going to be there, and whatever problems I'm thinking of. So I think it's less about being away from the world and it's more about being in the world, but with a different energy and with a different perspective that helps me navigate the world more gracefully, as I said earlier, and peacefully. And yeah.
So I don't know if we have time for this question with this episode or if we want to save this for the next episode, but I think it would be great to talk about. So if I'm living in a spiritual lane, how do I get started on that? What does that look like and how do I get started? Is that something we can start with today or do we want to save that for the next episode?
I think we could just give a taster. I mean, it's different for everyone what brings us to spirituality. For some of us, we've had a life crisis, and whether it's a heart attack or whether it's a great loss or something that has shaken our world, our inner world, to such a degree that we look to spirituality or we look to meditation as a support. And others are just naturally seeking and have always been seeking truth, have been seeking something greater than what we're living in now, have this quiet feeling inside that there's so much more and there's something really powerful beyond this physical world we're in. And so it depends on what brings you, but I think it's intriguing to know who we are. It's intriguing for every person to want to know a little bit more about, well, who am I really? There's who I seem to be, and there's how people respond to me. But that feeling inside of either they don't see me who I really am, or I don't even see me who I really am. What have I got in here? What potential is there? So I think that we start in Raj Yoga, we start with who am I? We start with an awareness that I am the sentient being. I am the being of energy, the spirit that animates this body. And while I have a human body, the being in the body, we could call soul, we could call spirit, we could call conscient being, whatever language is comfortable. But I am the one who's the thinking, feeling being who animates this body. And when not in this body, it will be called a corpse. And so because I'm in it, we call it a human being, and I'm functioning and making this body work. And I'm, the soul sits behind the eyes, center of the forehead, in the brain. And so the soul makes the brain function, but science considers consciousness to be one of its biggest problems because they have thought of it as an extension of the brain, as somehow spirit could be material, and it can't be. So the fact that I am energy living in a physical body is our starting place. And then let's learn more about, well, what is that? Who is that? How does that work? And when we experience that as more than a concept, It's like coming home to the self, and it becomes a go-to experience in any situation that I can pull within to that quiet space that is the spirit untouched by the physical world. And find some respite there, find some comfort there, and certainly find stability and strength, the likes of which I didn't know I had.
I think that's a beautiful place to stop this episode and pick it up in episode 3 the next time around. Thanks so much.
Thank you.